First of all, I would like to welcome and to thank Glenn to come here. That's the third time that Glenn is coming with us. And he is at this moment the chairman of the International Advisory Board we have here at the center, with the idea of having several people working on different countries in order to receive early and fresh feedback from other parts of the world. You know that in innovation, the technology markets are global. We haven't national markets. And then even in Spain, it's very important to know what is happening in other countries. No? And then the situation in the States is very important for us. And then in this case, Glenn has accepted 2 years ago to become a member and then a chairman of this advisory board from one side. And he has a very long curriculum in several places. He is at this moment a member of the advisory council of River Meadow Software, senior vice president of Juniper Networks, ex-vice president of Cisco, ex-vice president of Hewlett Packard, and then with a long trajectory in also in supporting startups, and then with a deep knowledge about the mechanism for financing new technology-based companies in the States. So. Then thank you very much for coming. He will speak us today about connected innovation. In fact, we were using this name as the lemma as the motto for the whole workshop, because I understand that this, in fact, as Roberto also said before in the welcome session, a very important element to consider how innovation is moving forward for the future. Then thank you very much again, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Gonzalo. How much time do I have?
You have half an hour.
Half an hour? I'll try to...
No, less than that, 20 minutes.
20 minutes. So thank you for the opportunity again to join you here in Madrid. Gonzalo, congratulations. So I think the results that we've seen so far from this program, and now the third time here for us to meet, you can see the progress. And I've had the pleasure of working with several of the teams that have come through this program and been very excited about the potential and the progress that they have made so far. And I apologize, I told myself I would learn some Spanish 3 years ago. I've not learned very much at all, so I'll have to continue to work on it. Gonzalo asked me to think about what I could share about innovation through collaboration and combination, specifically the combination of different technologies to create a commercial opportunity and hopefully a market-winning company. And as is often the case, I think that when you challenge me in such a way, Gonzalo, for some reason I think about my failures and not my successes. So some of my story today will be about missed opportunities and combinations that ultimately have proven to be very important, but that I could not see. And I think it's because of some factors that I'd like to point out for all of you, hopefully, to learn from and perhaps not make the same mistakes that I made. I looked on the internet to find a picture. So this technology that you see on the slide, perhaps you don't recognize. This is the Gutenberg press. So perhaps one of the most important innovations in the history of mankind, is the ability to mass produce publications, books. And I had heard this story before, so unfortunately I don't know if we can verify this, but apparently Gutenberg was asked how he came up with this innovation of the press. And he says, it was quite simple. I just combined the wine press and the coin punch. And those two technologies together allowed me to produce the press. So I'm not old enough to have experienced this myself. So I thought perhaps there would be some examples that I could cite for you that were more recent and that would provide you sort of similar examples of the combination of technologies. Try this one. There we go. So I think the theme for me is that this opportunity of innovation through combination, the innovation that can occur, is sometimes very hard to see. And I thought I would relate to you a specific example from my own career in history. Both of these examples from my time many years ago at HP. So in the In the mid-1990s, I was a young executive at the Hewlett-Packard Company, and as part of my regular visits to Europe, I was asked to visit the HP Labs organization. And so HP Labs still is, and at the time I think was even more robust as a research organization that was focused on some very basic research and some innovation, some of which became products. Some of the most famous of which, the inkjet printer was one of the first innovations that was such a huge success for HP. But I was here on a visit, and I visited our installation, the lab's installation in Grenoble. And the team there was quite excited. You know, they said, well, the general manager, vice president is coming to visit us. Let's show them the most innovative of technologies that we have. And so they proceeded to describe to me the work that they were doing in compression, file compression, and in encoding. And so it was a technology at the time that would ultimately be known as MP3. So they said, oh, okay, so we need to show you this demonstration. Oh, fantastic. So we were in Grenoble. They got on the telephone and they called their research colleagues in Bristol in the UK. And they said, well, we're going to show you this demonstration. So as they placed this call, and what they were going to demonstrate was the ability to send a compressed file from Bristol in the UK to the installation in Grenoble using the then very young internet. And the choice of file that they sent was to stream some music. And I thought, wow, this is fantastic. In fact, the funniest thing, and when I tell this story to my children, they do not understand. I said, what I remember most succinctly was one of the researchers in Grenoble getting on his desk, standing up on his desk so he could be heard across the entire lab. And he said to everyone, it's my turn to use the internet. And it's because the bandwidth was so small that the idea of sending music over such a network connection was going to absorb all of the bandwidth, and so everyone else had to remove themselves from the process. So I was pleased to I think it was Beethoven. I think they played Beethoven for me, and I have to be honest with you. I thought, who could possibly want to hear music over the internet, right? So what possibly could be, the use for this kind of file streaming, technology on the internet? Well, of course, we all know the story. But why was it that I could not see this, right? So my immediate conclusion was, well, this is great. Perhaps there's too much money being spent in HP Labs in Grenoble. But the reason I couldn't see this was these technologies. So these are all photos from the internet, from something called the Radio Museum. And I have to admit that I still have all these devices. I didn't have the time to actually take my own pictures of these. And of course, on the left, some of you may be too young to remember these. So some people are saying yes. Some of them. The Sony Walkman changed my life. I remember getting on an airplane the first time with my headphones on, and people would say, well, what are you listening to? Of course, there's a CD player on the upper right. The combination technology of a cassette player and a radio on the lower right. This particular device was playing the theme song from Vangelis when my oldest daughter was born in 1990. So I thought, well, this is the way we listen to music. We have the radio, we have the cassette tape, we have this new technology, the CD. What use is this MP3 technology? Well, so what I missed was the understanding of what young people will do when given the opportunity to steal music, and the opportunity perhaps to share music. So we all know, or perhaps, again, some of you may be too young to remember Napster, but the combination of file sharing technologies with MP3 compression technologies is what ultimately began the process of the change, the significant change in the music industry, not only in the method of distribution for music, the method for buying music. It really fundamentally changed the industry all the way from the performer all the way through distribution into the business. So, in hindsight, especially for my children, it seems obvious that this is the way to do things. But just having the pinpoint technology, in fact, if you had looked at just MP3 and just file sharing technology independent of each other, it's not clear that you would have seen the opportunity for such a huge business and such a huge transformation. It's the combination of those two things and the recognition of human behavior driven by economics that really brings to the forefront the opportunity through the combination. So I have a Adobe Reader. Close. Yeah, I have no cursor. Technology. Is that you? Ah, there we go. So I thought I'd cite one more example. Are we safe?
No. Okay. Go ahead.
There we go. So, so the first one was a missed opportunity in not seeing the combination. The second one is actually one that I could see. And so what I'll take you through is a short and I'm sure an incomplete history of the e-book, the electronic book reader. These are some devices, again, for some of you that will look familiar. The device and actually the gentleman on the left is a gentleman named Alan Kay. And for those of you of a certain age, you'll remember Alan Kay as one of the most influential innovators in computing in the last 50 years. Alan Kay is holding a prototype of something that he called the Dynabook. And the Dynabook was developed, this prototype was developed in 1972. And the idea of having a computer that was portable, that you could carry, or carry on your, use on your lap or carry under your arm, in 1972 was a very innovative and foreign concept. The first use that he anticipated for such a book was actually for students, for kids from K through 12 as an instructional device. And so this idea that a book combined with computing technology really can be sourced all the way back to Alan Kay's original vision for this Dynabook. The Dynabook was actually never a commercial success. So he built the prototype, he built several initial versions of the device, and it never went into mass production. On the upper right, the device that some of you may recognize is the Apple Newton. And the Newton was the first attempt to build a personal digital assistant. This was a product that was brought to market by Apple, and was one of the first failures in the nascent or early stages of the development of the personal digital assistant. Again, this was not so much a book as it was a collaboration and note-taking device. But again, an early attempt at building a device that could be seen as perhaps an electronic book. The bottom right device is my favorite. So this is a device that was called the Softbook, and it was introduced as a concept to me in 1996. And so the idea was we could produce something that looks something like a book. The team had realized that the high cost of computing technology was always on the leading edge of technology, so the fastest processors, the best displays, the best batteries were always the most expensive technologies. So their idea was to go back a technology revision and use those technologies that were not quite so expensive. And so they were able to produce this prototype of an electronic book for, at the time, on the order of about $500, which was a pretty good price in 1997. I was at HP. They were looking for a large company sponsor to bring this product into manufacturing and into market. And I have to say, this was one of the most exciting opportunities for me that I saw in my career. I was given one to take home. I decided I would try this out myself. They gave me several source files as a first example, some books that would be interesting to read that were loaded on the device. And I proceeded to carry this around with me, and my wife thought I was crazy. So I will not forget, she said to me, "You're going to bed with a computer?" And I said, "Well, you know, it's a book." She said, "It does not look like a book to me." And I discovered, you know, a few of the flaws, and of course some of the flaws still exist. It was too heavy. So, you know, trying to lay it down flat on my back and hold the electronic book did not work, so I had to sit up in bed. And of course, it was not backlit at the time, so I'd keep the light, you know, on relatively high to be able to see the display. But I could see the potential for such a device. And probably because I was such a traveler. So as part of my work at HP at the time, I was on the road probably more than 50% of my time. And I literally would carry an abnormally large briefcase to be able to carry a novel, something entertaining to read, a technical book, and perhaps a business book. So and you know, at the time, the world's heaviest laptop. So the combination of those things to me seemed to be crazy, and to be able to replace it with a electronic book seemed to be something of a fantastic opportunity. So we had a problem. The problem was that we could not yet see exactly how to source the content. So the content problem was the biggest problem. And so what we decided as a team to propose was that we would go after the university textbook market. And so this is the university. I think some of this still exists because I can still, I see the bills for my daughter's textbooks from university. So publications for university students are very expensive. So whereas at the time you could buy a book, a popular novel for $10 or $15, of course a textbook at the time was $100. So there was certainly enough margin, and a lot of the cost that was borne by university publishers was because the market was relatively small. So the cost of production and the cost of inventory very high, and we thought, oh, this is a very compelling business opportunity. So, two problems. One is the publishers did not agree that this was a compelling problem. And second was that my fellow managers and executives at HP could not see this. So we were, in 1995, one of the market leaders in the personal computer business. There was early innovation in the laptop computing business. And the idea of a special purpose device that was designed specifically to replace the printed book seemed crazy. And while there was a willingness to do some innovation, every time there was a opportunity to expend an additional dollar in research or development for a new product, it would go into the existing product lines, not the new product lines. And so this was one of the key management lessons to me around the operations and leadership of a large company, is sometimes those things that require just a bit of funding and a bit of backing for some of the more innovative projects. It's just impossible in the context of a large company. So we know now the story of the success of the ebook. So in this picture you see, this is actually the first edition of the Kindle from Amazon. And of course the combination, and I have to admit that this never occurred to us, is that this idea that there could be an electronic bookstore was something that it did not occur to us, or if it did, it was such a downstream opportunity that we couldn't quite see how we could get the pairing of the two technologies. I think that the key, and who knows whether this is ultimately what happened, I don't know whether Jeff Bezos saw this opportunity at the very start, but frankly, one of the keys to success was he built a online bookstore for physical books first. And what that gave him was it gave him the leverage with the publishers to drive the innovation and change necessary to be able to produce digital books. He had amassed enough of a share of the published book market that he could drive the change within the publishers. And so this was a very clever, ultimately a very creative approach to this, and the combination of that bookstore and publishing piece along with the device piece ultimately drove its commercial success. So, my lessons learned. What are the attributes of success? Well, moving beyond the focus required on an innovative technology. You know, for the most part, the technology innovators, some of the best researchers that I ever worked with, they required so much focus in a particular technology area in order to make progress that they developed what you could call tunnel vision. So they could not see beyond the focus of their own project in order to be able to determine what the best application of the technology was. So the technology competencies that required perhaps were not as advanced in the complementary technologies, but not having those competencies directly on the team hindered the ability for those teams to see it. You also needed what I'll call contextual competencies, the understandings of the markets, the structure of markets, the motivations of the players in the industry, and how they might change. And, you know, particularly for me, and this was a lesson learned from HP, was that large companies, particularly well-run large companies, operate on a completely rational basis. They do the things that would advantage them in markets to improve their current offer. Asking them to do something like create an ebook is not rational. It's not rational. It doesn't fit into the viewpoint that you have when running a large billion-dollar business. So, you know, one of the tricks, I think, for larger companies is to determine what your innovation agenda is. And remember that it takes some separation from the rational company leadership in order to be able to fuel some of these innovations within the organization. So my personal insights, combining technologies, often critical to creating new businesses and new market opportunities. Sometimes these innovative technologies need to be combined with something existing. You know, Gutenberg, I don't know that there was an innovative coin punch and an innovative wine press, but the combination of the two actually created something quite powerful. And something useful is facilitating combination of technologies in perhaps weird or strange ways. I worked as the CEO of an incubator in Silicon Valley, and we would hold weekly exercises where we would randomly select markets and technologies to combine and to see what we could discover that would be interesting, new, innovative combinations as a brainstorming exercise. And my last point is that, you know, unfortunately in hindsight, it looks obvious. In foresight, as you're working and taking these things, maybe not so much. So I challenge all of you to look within your portfolio of things that you are working on, look for innovative combinations that will help you break through. And remember, if in particular you're working for a large company, challenge yourself to be irrational, at least some percentage of the time.